I remember the first time I realized just how different I was from the other kids at school. My name is Ethan, and I grew up in a small town where everyone seemed to know everyone else. On the surface, that might sound warm and comforting, but when you're the poor kid, the one with shoes that don't fit, second-hand clothes that smell faintly of mothballs, and a lunchbox that's always empty, it's a curse. From the very beginning, I stood out, but not in the way a child ever wants to. My classmates came to school with shiny new backpacks, packed lunches full of snacks with colorful wrappers, and shoes that looked like they were taken straight out of a store display. I, on the other hand, wore hand-me-downs that had been passed down so many times they looked almost see-through. My shoes were scuffed and too tight, but my parents couldn't afford new ones, so I walked around with blisters most days. I still hear the voices of my classmates echoing in my mind. "Hey, look at Ethan's shoes. Did your grandpa give them to you?" One boy, Jake, shouted across the classroom. He was one of the popular kids, the kind who always had the newest toys and clothes. The laughter that followed hit me harder than any punch could. I wanted to disappear into my chair, to sink into the floor tiles and vanish. Sometimes I'd pretend not to hear, but my silence only seemed to make them louder. One afternoon during recess, I was sitting alone on the swing set staring at the ground. Claire, one of the girls in my class, walked past with her friends. She covered her mouth, but I could still hear her words. "Why does Ethan always look like he hasn't eaten in days? Maybe his family can't afford food." Her friends burst out laughing, and I gripped the chains of the swing tighter, fighting back tears. They weren't wrong, though. Some days my lunch was nothing but a piece of bread and a small apple. I'd watch the others unwrap sandwiches, stuffed with meats and cheese, bags of chips, cookies, and juice boxes. My stomach growled, but I pretended I wasn't hungry. At home, things weren't much better. My dad worked odd jobs whenever he could find them, fixing roofs, cutting lawns, or repairing fences. My mom cleaned houses for wealthier families. They both worked themselves to the bone, yet we barely scraped by. "Ethan," my mom would say softly at night as she tucked me into bed, "things are hard now, but you're smart. One day you'll make a better life." Her words gave me a flicker of hope, but when I went back to school each day and faced the laughter, that hope dimmed. One of the worst days happened in 6th grade. Our teacher, Mrs. Parker, announced a project where each student had to bring in a poster board filled with family photos. Most of my classmates brought colorful boards filled with smiling vacation pictures, family gatherings, and birthday parties. When it was my turn, I stood at the front of the class holding a small, wrinkled sheet of paper with just 2 faded photos taped on it. One of me as a baby and another of my parents on their wedding day. That was all we had. Jake, sitting in the back, raised his hand and smirked. "Mrs. Parker, is Ethan's family too poor for a camera?" The class erupted in laughter and my face burned. Mrs. Parker tried to calm them down, but the damage was done. I rushed through my short presentation and sat down quickly, wishing I could vanish. That night I cried myself to sleep. My mom heard me and sat beside my bed. "Ethan," she whispered, brushing my hair back, "don't let their words define you. Remember, knowledge is something they can never take away from you." Her words planted a seed inside me, though I didn't realize it then. Middle school was even harder. Kids are cruel at that age, and they noticed everything, especially weakness. My clothes, my lunches, my lack of money for field trips. They all became ammunition. One time during lunch, Jake snatched my apple right off my tray. "You don't need this," he sneered. "You look like you're used to being hungry." I lunged to grab it back, but he held it up high, just out of reach. The cafeteria erupted with laughter. I sat down, defeated, while he took a big bite out of it. Teachers saw these things happen, but they rarely stepped in. Maybe they thought kids needed to toughen up, or maybe they just didn't want to get involved. Either way, I learned early on that I was on my own. But even in the middle of all that humiliation, I discovered something about myself. Books became my escape. While other kids spent their afternoons playing video games or hanging out at the mall, I stayed late in the school library, devouring stories and learning anything I could. History, literature, science, it didn't matter. I read it all. Mrs. Green, the school librarian, noticed me one afternoon. "Ethan, you're in here a lot," she said kindly, smiling as she handed me a stack of books. "You know, not many kids your age read like this." I shrugged, embarrassed. "It's quiet here." She nodded, as if she understood more than I was saying. From then on, she always saved the best books for me, slipping them into my backpack before anyone else could check them out. Through books, I found not only knowledge, but also comfort. For a few hours, I could escape my world of poverty and cruelty and enter a place where anything was possible. Still, reality always came crashing back. When it was time for school dances or sports games, I was never invited, never included. If I showed up, I was either ignored or mocked. High school wasn't much different. By then, the social groups were firmly established, and I was still on the outside. I remember one particular day in 9th grade when the teacher asked everyone to share their career dreams. One by one, my classmates said things like doctor, lawyer, engineer, or even movie star. When it was my turn, I swallowed hard and said, "I want to be a teacher." The room went silent for a moment before Jake, yes, he was still in my class, snorted loudly. "Who'd want you as a teacher? You can't even afford pencils." The room erupted again, and my face burned with shame. But deep inside, his words lit a fire in me. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was determination, but I made a silent promise to myself. One day I would prove them wrong. I would become the kind of teacher who didn't just lecture, but who understood kids like me, the ones who felt invisible, humiliated, and left behind. That night, I opened one of the notebooks I used to scribble in, and for the first time, I wrote down a dream. I will become a teacher. I will return to this school not as the poor kid they laughed at, but as someone they have to respect. I didn't know how or when, but that dream became my anchor. As the years went on, the bullying never truly stopped, but I started to care less. Every insult, every laugh, every time they pointed out my poverty, it all became fuel. Instead of breaking me, it built me. And though I still cried some nights, I also held on to that notebook, that dream. I was determined. One day I would walk back into those halls, not as Ethan, the poor kid, but as Mr. Ethan, the teacher. High school wasn't just a place of humiliation for me anymore, it became a battleground. Every day I woke up knowing I would face ridicule, but I also knew I had a secret weapon, my determination. While others laughed at me, I was slowly sharpening my mind. I took every advanced class I could, even though I often had to borrow textbooks from teachers or use the battered copies left in the back of the classroom. My family couldn't afford the expensive calculators or fancy supplies, so I improvised. I'd do math problems late at night by candlelight when the electricity was shut off, scribbling notes on the backs of old envelopes my mom saved. One evening, as I sat hunched over a pile of assignments, my dad came into the room, his hands rough and calloused from a day of labor. "Ethan," he said quietly, "you don't have to push yourself this hard. Get some rest." I looked up, my eyes burning from exhaustion. "Dad, I have to. I need good grades. I can't stay stuck like this forever." He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Then promise me one thing. No matter how hard it gets, don't quit." That promise became another anchor in my life. Of course, it wasn't easy. Our family barely had money for essentials. When I was 16, I got my first job bussing tables at a small diner downtown. The shifts were long, the pay was terrible, and I often went home smelling like grease and coffee, but it meant I could help pay for my own school supplies, and sometimes, just sometimes, I could buy myself lunch at school instead of going hungry. I'll never forget one Friday night when I walked into the diner wearing my oversized uniform. A group of my classmates was there, including Jake. He spotted me instantly and smirked. "Hey, look, poor Ethan's working. Want me to leave you a big tip? Maybe $5 whole. That should buy you a sandwich for the week." His friends laughed so loud that customers turned their heads. My face burned, but I bit my tongue. I had two choices: fire back and risk losing my job, or swallow the humiliation and keep working. I chose the latter. When I got home that night, exhausted and aching, I collapsed onto my bed. My mum came into the room with a worried look. "Did something happen?" she asked. I shook my head. "Nothing new, just them." She sighed and sat beside me. "Ethan, you're stronger than they know. Remember, they laugh because they don't understand your strength. One day you'll look back and thank yourself for not giving up." I wanted to believe her, but at that moment all I felt was anger and shame. The only thing that kept me going was the dream I carried deep inside, that one day I'd return to school as a teacher. During my senior year, I doubled down. I studied harder than ever, applied for every scholarship I could find, and begged teachers for recommendation letters. Some teachers, like Mrs. Green, the librarian, and Mr. Daniels, my English teacher, saw something in me. "Ethan," Mr. Daniels told me one afternoon after class, "you've got a gift. You don't just memorize information, you understand it. Don't let your circumstances stop you. You'd make a damn good teacher one day." That compliment stayed with me. When graduation came, I wasn't one of the kids cheered by the whole school. My name was called, and only my parents clapped loudly, their pride echoing across the auditorium. But I didn't care. I had done it. That summer, while many of my classmates prepared for trips or celebrated with new cars as graduation gifts, I worked double shifts at the diner and picked up weekend jobs mowing lawns. Every dollar I earned went into a savings jar labeled college fund. When the acceptance letter finally came, offering me a partial scholarship to a local university, I held it in my hands like it was gold. My parents cried when I showed them. "You're the first in our family to go to college," my mom whispered, hugging me tightly. But going to college wasn't a magic solution. It was just the beginning of another uphill battle. At university, I was surrounded by students who had grown up with every advantage: money, connections, confidence. They walked into lecture halls with brand new laptops and sleek backpacks, while I carried my same old second-hand bag and scribbled notes on thrift store notebooks. Some professors noticed. Dr. Miller, one of my education professors, once pulled me aside after class. "Ethan, I see the way you study, the way you participate. You're not just here to pass, you're here to grow. Don't lose that." I nodded, grateful, but growth came at a price. To afford rent, I worked 3 jobs: the diner on weekends, the library on campus in the evenings, and janitorial shifts late at night. There were days I survived on little more than instant noodles and coffee. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. I remember one night vividly. I was cleaning classrooms long after midnight, my back aching, when I caught sight of my reflection in the window. For a moment, I felt a wave of despair. What if I never make it? I whispered to myself. What if they were right about me? But then I remembered Jake's mocking laughter, the apple he snatched from me, the way everyone laughed during my 6th grade presentation, and just like that, my determination hardened again. "No," I said firmly to my reflection, "I'm going to make it. I don't care how hard it gets." The next few years were a blur of exhaustion, work, and study, but slowly I began to see results. My grades were strong, and I was earning respect from professors. Some of them even gave me small opportunities to assist in research or tutor other students. Ironically, tutoring became one of my greatest joys. Helping struggling students understand math or literature gave me a sense of purpose. For the first time, I felt like I was living a piece of my dream. One student I tutored, a freshman named Chris, struggled badly in English. After weeks of working together, he passed his exam with a smile. "You should be a teacher," he told me, grinning. "You explain things better than the professors." I laughed, but deep down his words meant everything. By the time I graduated college, I was drained but proud. My family, though still struggling, sat in the audience cheering louder than anyone else. As I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, I thought back to that notebook in high school, the one where I had written my dream. I will become a teacher. Step by step, I was making that dream real. After graduation, I faced another mountain: finding a job. Schools weren't eager to hire a fresh graduate without experience, but I refused to give up. I applied everywhere, from small rural schools to city districts. Months passed. Rejections piled up. My savings dwindled. I went back to bussing tables to survive. One night, as I wiped down tables at the diner, I overheard a group of teachers from a nearby district talking about a vacancy at a middle school. My heart pounded. I waited until they finished and then nervously approached them. "Excuse me," I said, voice shaking, "did you say there's a teaching position open?" They looked me up and down, clearly surprised by my greasy apron and exhausted face. But one of them nodded. "Yes. It's tough, though. Not many want the job. It's in a rough part of town." "I want it," I said firmly. The next morning, I applied. To my shock, I got an interview. I walked into that small, run-down school with my only suit, borrowed from a friend, and spoke from the heart. I know what it feels like to be the kid who's overlooked, laughed at, and left behind, I told the principal. That's why I want to teach, because I'll never let a student of mine feel invisible. 2 weeks later, I received the call. I got the job. When I hung up the phone, I cried, not out of sadness, but out of relief, pride, and overwhelming gratitude. I was finally a teacher. The morning I walked into Westfield High School as an adult, I swear my heart nearly stopped. The building hadn't changed much. The same brick walls, the squeak of sneakers on the gym floor echoing in the distance, the faint smell of cafeteria food wafting through the halls. For everyone else, it was just another school. For me, it was the battlefield where I'd been mocked, humiliated, and broken down countless times. As I adjusted the strap of my worn leather satchel and glanced at the sign above the entrance, I felt a wave of emotions, fear, pride, and something I couldn't quite name. "Welcome back, Ethan," I whispered to myself. Walking through the hallways was surreal. Lockers lined the walls exactly as I remembered. I half expected to hear Jake's voice sneering at me from behind, or the sound of laughter following me. But this time, it was different. I wasn't the kid with second-hand clothes and empty pockets anymore. I was Mr. Carter, the new English teacher. The first weeks were overwhelming. The students tested me, of course. Middle and high schoolers always test new teachers. Some whispered behind my back. Some rolled their eyes when I gave instructions, but I didn't flinch, because I recognized them. Not individually, but as a whole. I saw versions of myself in their tired eyes, in the way some kids tried too hard to fit in the way others laughed at someone just to hide their own insecurities. One boy, in particular, stood out to me. His name was Daniel. He was small, wore clothes a size too big, and sat alone at lunch. I saw the way the popular kids made fun of him, and my stomach twisted. It was like watching a mirror of my younger self. One day after class, I stopped him. "Daniel, can I talk to you for a second?" He froze, nervous. "Did I do something wrong, Mr. Carter?" I smiled gently. "No, not at all. I just wanted to say, you're doing a great job. I noticed the effort you put into your essays. Keep at it." His eyes widened, and for a moment I saw relief and hope flicker across his face. That's when I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. But fate has a cruel sense of irony, because just as I was finding my footing, the past walked right back into my life. It happened one Friday during a faculty meeting. The new assistant principal was introduced. I nearly dropped my notebook when I saw him. Jake. Yes, that Jake. He had aged, sure, but the smirk was the same. His suit was sharp, his handshake firm, and when his eyes landed on me, recognition flashed instantly. Well, he said after the meeting ended, cornering me near the coffee machine, "If it isn't poor little Ethan Carter, or should I say, Mr. Carter now." He chuckled. "I've got to admit I didn't see this one coming." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "People change, Jake. Some of us grow up." He raised an eyebrow. "Still got that fire, huh? Don't take it personally if I keep a close eye on you. This school doesn't tolerate weakness." The words stung, even though I knew they were meant to. It was like being 16 all over again, standing in the cafeteria with him mocking me. But I wasn't that kid anymore. Still, his presence made my job harder. Subtly, Jake questioned my decisions in meetings, dismissed my suggestions, and even hinted to others that I might not last long. One afternoon, I overheard him joking with another staff member. I mean, really, Carter. He was always the loser kid. And now he's supposed to teach. What kind of message does that send? My blood boiled, but I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I focused on my students. Daniel became more confident over the months. He started sitting with other kids at lunch, even raising his hand in class more often. One day, after giving him back a paper with an A on it, he whispered, "Thanks, Mr. Carter. You're the first teacher who ever believed in me." Those words carried me through the darkest days. But the real turning point came during the annual school talent show. I had been asked to help supervise backstage. As I watched students rehearse, I noticed Daniel pacing nervously with a guitar. "You performing?" I asked. He nodded, eyes wide with fear. But I don't think I can. Everyone will laugh at me. I crouched down to his level. Daniel, let me tell you something. I used to be the kid everyone laughed at too. But the truth is, their laughter doesn't define you. Your courage does. Go out there and show them who you are. When Daniel walked onto that stage, his hands trembling, I held my breath. The first few notes were shaky, but then his voice soared, clear, strong, and beautiful. By the end, the audience erupted in applause. For the first time, Daniel stood tall, smiling with pride. As I clapped, my eyes scanned the crowd. That's when I saw Jake watching, arms crossed. He looked unsettled. Later, he cornered me again in the parking lot. You think one kid singing changes anything? He sneered. You're still the same, Ethan. You'll always be the poor kid we laughed at. Something inside me snapped. No, Jake, I said firmly. I'm not that kid anymore. I'm the teacher who just helped a boy believe in himself. That's more than you've ever done for anyone. For a moment, he didn't respond. He just stared at me, his jaw tight. Then he walked away without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every moment. The cafeteria humiliation, the laughter, the nights of hunger and exhaustion. And now, here I was, standing in the same building, not as the victim but as the mentor. The next day, something incredible happened. During my third period class, the principal stopped by unexpectedly. She watched quietly as I taught, her eyes following the way students leaned forward, engaged and actually enjoying the lesson. After class, she pulled me aside. Ethan, I've been hearing great things about your work. You have a real gift for connecting with students. We need teachers like you here. Keep it up. Her praise hit me like a wave. Walking home that evening, I realized something profound. My past didn't vanish when I became a teacher. The scars were still there. But instead of holding me back, they had become my greatest strength. Every cruel laugh, every moment of hunger, every insult, it all built the foundation for the teacher I had become. And though Jake's shadow still lingered, it no longer defined me. Because this time I wasn't the poor kid being mocked at school. I was the teacher. The day that changed everything began like any other. The halls were buzzing with chatter, students rushing between classes, and teachers juggling lesson plans. But there was a special event scheduled that afternoon, the annual Alumni Day Assembly. Former students would return to speak, sharing their career paths and experiences with the current generation. When I saw the announcement posted in the teacher's lounge, my stomach tightened. I knew it was going to be a delicate day. Alumni events often brought back faces from the past, and sure enough, when the guest list circulated, I saw names I recognized, names that belonged to the very kids who had mocked me, humiliated me, and treated me as less than human. One of those names, in bold letters, was Jake Reynolds, listed as assistant principal and keynote speaker. For a moment, doubt crept in. Would he try to embarrass me again, this time in front of the entire school? Would those old wounds reopen? But then I reminded myself, I wasn't the poor kid anymore. I was the teacher now. When the gymnasium filled with students, parents, and alumni, I took my seat near the faculty section. The air buzzed with excitement. Former students walked onto the stage one after another, sharing stories of business successes, careers, and adventures. The kids clapped politely, though some were more interested in their phones. Finally, Jake stepped up to the podium. His voice carried confidently across the room. Good afternoon, everyone. As some of you know, I grew up right here at Westfield High. This school shaped me, taught me discipline, and gave me the foundation to succeed. I'm honored to be back today as your assistant principal, helping guide the next generation. Applause filled the gym. Jake smiled, scanning the audience like a king addressing his subjects. For a moment, I felt the old sting of being overshadowed. But then the principal approached the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. And now, I'd like to introduce one of our very own teachers, someone who has already made an incredible impact on his students. Please welcome Mr. Ethan Carter. The words echoed in my ears. My legs felt heavy as I stood, but the roar of student applause pushed me forward. As I walked onto the stage, I caught sight of Jake. His smile faltered, his eyes narrowed like he couldn't quite believe what was happening. I stepped to the microphone, took a deep breath, and began. Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Carter, and like many of you sitting here, I was once a student at Westfield High. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some of the older alumni whispered to one another, recognizing me. I wasn't the popular kid. I wasn't the star athlete or the one who came from a wealthy family. I was the poor kid, the one people mocked for the clothes I wore, the lunch I didn't have, and the dreams they thought were impossible. The gym fell silent. Students who had been distracted moments before now stared at me wide-eyed. I remember standing in these very halls feeling invisible. I remember being laughed at during presentations, having food taken from me in the cafeteria, and hearing words that cut deeper than anyone realized. But I also remember something else. I remember promising myself that I wouldn't let their laughter define me. I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. Years later, after working jobs that kept me up until dawn, after studying on scraps of paper by candlelight, after surviving nights when I thought I'd never make it, I came back. Not as the poor kid they mocked, but as a teacher. Right here. In the same classrooms where I once felt small, I now stand tall, not because I have everything, but because I refuse to give up. The crowd erupted in applause. I glanced sideways and saw Jake shifting uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw tight. I continued, my voice steady and strong. I want every student here to hear this. Whatever pain you're carrying, whatever struggles you face, it doesn't define who you are. Your courage, your persistence, and your heart, that's what defines you. I used to be the kid no one believed in. Now I get to be the teacher who believes in all of you. The applause was thunderous. Students stood, clapping, cheering. Some of the alumni nodded, their expressions softened. In that moment, I wasn't just sharing my story. I was reclaiming my dignity, rewriting the narrative that had haunted me for years. When the assembly ended, students rushed up to thank me, some with tears in their eyes. "Mr. Carter, that was amazing," one girl said. "I didn't know teachers went through stuff like that." "You're inspiring," another added. "If you could do it, maybe I can too." Each word filled me with pride. But the most unexpected moment came when I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Jake. His expression was tight, his voice low. "You did well up there." I met his gaze. "Thank you." For the first time, there was no smirk, no mockery, just silence. And in that silence, I realized something. Jake's opinion no longer had power over me. That night when I walked home, the stars above seemed brighter. I thought of my younger self, sitting alone at lunch, writing in that notebook. I will become a teacher. I had done it. But more than that, I had transformed the pain into purpose. The following weeks were different. Students were more engaged in class, inspired by my story. Daniel, the boy who reminded me so much of myself, walked taller than ever. He even joined the school's music club, his confidence blossoming. One afternoon, he stopped by my classroom after school. "Mr. Carter," he said shyly, "I just wanted to say thank you. If you hadn't believed in me, I don't think I'd ever have believed in myself." I smiled, my throat tight with emotion. "Daniel, you already had it in you. I just helped you see it." As he left, I sat back in my chair and let the weight of it all sink in. The journey from humiliation to respect hadn't been easy. It had been carved out of sleepless nights, tears, hard work, and resilience. But now, standing on the other side, I knew it was worth every second. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. And I had turned my pain into something powerful, something that could help others rise above their own struggles. So to everyone watching this video, I want you to remember, your past does not define your future. The people who mock you, belittle you, or try to keep you down, one day they may see you succeed in ways they never imagined. But the real victory isn't proving them wrong. The real victory is proving yourself right. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Don't quit on yourself. Even in the darkest times, hold on to your dream. Because one day you'll look back and realize that every moment of pain was shaping you into the person you were meant to be. And if this story touched you, inspired you, or made you reflect, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more real stories that remind us of the strength we all carry inside. Remember, you are more powerful than your circumstances. And one day, just like me, you'll step back into the place where they doubted you, not as a victim, but as a victor.